What's up, everybody? The Common Sense Messiah is back to challenge another mainstream narrative. And the narrative today that we want to challenge is something that most men do not know and it affects them. And this is the whole idea of adopting femininity. And this is particularly to the married men. As it so happens, when you're married, and in the modern context of marriage, we have you going to the same house as your wife, sleeping in the same bed. So you're within a lot of her space a lot of times. So within that coexisting of that space, most men tend to develop feminine tendencies that they pick up from their wives. And this happens for a very particular reason that is more natural than anything. So I am not going to be hating on that phenomenon, more like making you aware of it and how you can fix it. But I feel like I need to give this story a bit more context. I need to take you back in time to pre-colonial Africa. You see, most of the African cultures that we have, various tribes all over the continent, majority of them were polygamous. And the way they carried out this polygamy was in a manner that a good number of them, the men had multiple wives. Each of these wives had their own homestead within the same compound, and the man had his own home, like his own homestead in within the compound, where that is his space. That is like his man cave. No one was allowed to go in. Maybe the wives when they're serving him food, and maybe in the night time, whichever wife he feels like summoning. So perhaps tonight he might feel like, let's say he's a man of 5 wives. So perhaps today he feels like he wants to bed wife number 5. So he summons her for the night. Tomorrow he might feel he needs wife number 3. So that's how it worked. And even then, it was only on a necessity basis. At certain times, the man would feel like he's totally okay, doesn't need any of his wife's services. So he exists within that space as his own man cave. And I got to be very curious about this phenomenon because it happens across multiple cultures. All right. Now, the reason why it happened that way, or the reason why these old men you chose to live that way, it made sense in the modern context of marriage because they understood something about intersexual dynamics that we don't understand as modern men. The fact that female nature tends to be very, very influential in a manner. If a man and a woman were to coexist, chances are the woman is gonna train the man more, or in a sense, the man is gonna develop female tendencies much more than the man is going to impose some masculinity on the woman. So why is this the case? Now, the way this whole thing about attraction works is that men are easily attracted to women. Women were crafted to be beautiful, attractive, and the feminine energy as well, it's super attractive. That attractiveness makes men want them. And the way they choose to go about this wanting this female or how they want to get this female is by impressing her, peacocking. Okay? We see this a lot. You might start grooming yourself a bit different, becoming more stylish and all that, fixing your space because you want to get the attention of a certain girl and you want her to come to your space, to come to your world, be your woman. So you tend to want to impress or to create and curate an experience around yourself that will accommodate and impress her. So that aspect is the very thing that leads to this development of female tendencies once the woman comes into your space. Why? Because this nature doesn't really tend to stop. What happens is you will want this woman to feel more comfortable, more comfortable, more comfortable, and that is when most men start losing their frame. They surrender their masculinity, and you find that most of them have relinquished control of their homesteads 100% to their women, in a manner that it is now commonly agreed amongst married men that the house is the woman's kingdom. She decides what curtains are going to be put, she decides what sofas, she decides what food is going to be cooked on that particular day, she decides all these things. The house or the homestead becomes her kingdom. You have allowed her femininity to reign full time. And in a sense, since she is the dominant force in the household, that means within the times that you are at home with her, you are existing in her space. You are existing in her frame. And this is why it becomes super easy. super easy for you to develop feminine tendencies. Why? Because you'll start observing the routines that your wife has put in place that are catering to her femininity, and they will start influencing you one way or another. She'll buy for you some fluffy pink slippers, and they're super comfortable. They're designed to be that comfortable. You start loving them. You wear them. Some pink, you know, bath towel or something, and also she notices that your skin is, a bit dry or stuff like that, and she says, no one in my home walks around with dry skin. So she gives you her skincare routine. And for the larger part, it makes your skin feel good. So now you do have a skincare routine. Then she notices maybe your fingernails are looking a bit, maybe you work sometime, because men tend to use their hands a lot in their workplace and all that. So you have cuticles, your fingernails are looking the way they want, they just shaggy all through. And she decides, okay, I'm gonna fix your nails. So she applies gel polish on them, trims them, removes the cuticles. All this feels good because it's designed to feel good, but it is not a part of the masculine experience. So eventually what happens is, slowly by slowly, you start figuring it, you start adopting her routine, you start adopting her worldview, you start adopting her feminine energy, because as it is, you have allowed her to reign supreme in the homestead. The ancient men of old understood this, and they knew the best method to avoid these women, or these women that I have married as a polygamous man. The best way for me to avoid them getting to contaminate my masculinity with their femininity is by separating the spaces in which we exist. So they're all going to have their own houses within my compound, as because it's my homestead. So we're going to have multiple homesteads, each one dedicated to each wife with their kids. And this particular homestead is going to be mine, and it's going to be my man cave. If I need any of them, I will summon them here. But at no point am I coexisting with them day in, day out, waking up the same bed, following up the same routines, all of that, because they understood that female nature is very influential. And the dynamic that exists between men and women is that of men are easily drawn to the women and will oftentimes feel the need to impress the woman. And as a result of that, then you start adopting female tendencies and all that. And this is why you find that there are men who have developed what I call female speech. Married men, all right? Older men, very married men, older men, but they have developed something we call female speech. The manner in which they speak, their intonation, the vocabulary they use, the way they phrase their words, it sounds as though you're talking to a woman. Why? Because they have allowed their wife's feminine energy to cross over to them. And this is a very natural phenomenon because it tends to happen in multiple spaces, not just even in the marriage. For instance, you might have a friend, or you might meet a stranger, and you decide to have a conversation with them. The way they articulate themselves, the way they speak, might lead you to, inferring into what career they are in because of the vocabulary they use and because of the way they speak. If it's someone who's working in the corporate world, there are certain corporate terminologies that tend to come out a lot in their speaking. There are certain, abbreviations and all this, a certain mannerism of speech that is relative to their career field that has, informed the way they speak because they spend most of their day in the workplace talking like that, addressing people in that manner, and it has led to them developing that as a pattern of speech even for informal situations. Same case with lawyers. There's a certain legal terminologies and a legal manner of speaking, kind of argumentative in such, it follows a certain pattern that if you listen to this person speak, you're going to be very much aware that this person is a lawyer or works in the legal field, and it's all informed by the way they speak, and that's because they spend most of their time working and speaking in that manner, so that tends to form or inform the vocabulary and the speech patterns they adopt. Now that is just a small part of the influence that we get based on the spaces we exist in. So here we have a man who has allowed his wife to reign supreme in the homestead, so meaning the house is run by her feminine energy, and every time the man is in that house, he is adopting female speech because that's the way the wife speaks, that's the way the wife wants to be addressed, that's the way the wife addresses the kids and all these things. And they don't realize that they have relinquished their control because in their minds they think, okay, I'm providing, I come home to a house that is catered for in all manners. It's clean, the kids are okay, all that. So to them, it doesn't look like they have surrendered their frame to the point of the female energy reigning supreme in that house, but that's usually what happens. That's usually what happens. And then the same man will adopt the philosophy of happy wife, happy life, meaning the more she has her way, the less bothersome she becomes, and the more peace you get to enjoy. So most men get to fall into this state of, letting the woman have her way most of the time and all this. And in that letting her have her way, you're letting her energy dominate the space most of the time, and you are subject to that space. And that is dangerous because the whole concept of marriage is that you as a man are marrying her. You're bringing her into your world. So you can imagine after marriage how weird it is that all of a sudden you have relinquished that control and you're now in her world because her feminine energy reigns supreme, and it's by your doing because you accepted to relinquish all control. And you've relinquished all control such that her energy is not only dominant, it is so supreme that it has started creeping into your nature as a man. So, what would be my recommendation? Because I understand we live in the modern world, it's quite expensive to have the setup that we had back in the day when the old men of Africa used to have separate houses for him and the wives. So it's quite expensive nowadays. And in fact, the mode of marriage that we have now tends to enforce that the two of you are one and you need to coexist in the same space. So the best method of, or the best advice I can give you to avoid this phenomenon from happening, the phenomenon of where her energy creeps into your nature and changes you and makes you become a feminine man, the best way of doing that is to ensure that you don't surrender your frame at any point. And what do I mean by surrendering your frame? Before you love her, before you even love your kids, you need to love your masculinity first and own it. And be so selfish with it to a point that not even your wife, not even your kids can tamper with it. That's the degree of ownership you need to possess your masculinity with. It's so effing perfectionist. It's a perfectionist nature in you that you have crafted around your masculinity, that this is who I am and I love it. That will allow you to be in the state of being protective over that part of your nature, that will make it easier for you to recognize things that are going to be dangerous to your masculinity and things that are going to be potentially dangerous in a sense of, corrupting you. So the moment you do that, it becomes very easy for you to live with your wife, with your kids, without adopting femininity from your wife. You are the one who married her, you brought her into your world. It's not the other way around. So for that to happen, it means you need to be the supreme authority of your own space, your own masculine essence, your own peace of mind, and all these things. And that will not only serve you, it will also serve the family because that's the man she fell in love with, and that's also the man that's going to be a good father to the kids. Because trust me, losing your masculinity and becoming more feminine does not serve her interest in any way, and it does not serve the interest of the kids in any way. In any case, it makes it much worse for them because it becomes a situation where you're present but it's like you're absent because your masculine essence, your masculine energy is not being felt. That being said, have a nice time and I'll see you in the next one.